Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Territory of Cinema channel. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a big thumbs up. Today we are diving into a discussion about the movie Karate Kid Legends 2025. The flickering neon of a dimly lit dojo sign, a relic perhaps from a bygone era of martial arts cinema, sets the stage for this modern iteration of the classic tale. We find a young protagonist, perhaps burdened by the invisible weight of expectation, much like a young Ralph Macchio once carried the hopes of the valley. This new generation finds themselves transplanted, a common catalyst for conflict and growth, landing them in a community steeped in tradition, yet perhaps wary of outsiders. The central conflict immediately surfaces, less about brute force and more about the clash of philosophies. We see echoes of Mr. Miyagi's quiet strength in the mentor figure, though perhaps this time the wisdom is tempered with a modern understanding of competitive pressure. This sense of mentorship is crucial. It's not just about learning to punch, it's about learning to be. The mentor, perhaps a seasoned veteran whose own competitive fire was banked long ago, recognizes raw potential, a spark needing careful cultivation. The antagonist naturally represents the polished, perhaps overly commercialized side of martial arts. Their training methods feel relentless, focused purely on victory, lacking the soul that the protagonist is slowly absorbing. You can almost picture the relentless hours spent practicing, mirroring the dedication we've seen in countless biographical dramas about athletes who clawed their way to the top. The antagonist's lineage is clear, suggesting a dynasty that needs defending, creating high stakes beyond simple bragging rights. As our hero struggles, we witness the necessary moments of near defeat, the classic training montages reimagined for a contemporary audience. Instead of waxing cars, perhaps it's mastering digital choreography or finding balance in augmented reality training simulations, yet the core principle remains: discipline achieved through monotonous, often frustrating repetition. This struggle connects deeply with the audience, reminding us that mastery, whether in film, sports, or life, is built brick by agonizing brick. There are moments of levity, often provided by supporting characters who ground the narrative, offering camaraderie that substitutes for the traditional lonely training regimen. These friendships are vital. They are the safety net when the grand competition looms. The climax arrives, not just as a tournament bracket resolution, but as a personal test of character. The techniques displayed are breathtaking, a visual spectacle that honors the legacy while pushing cinematic boundaries. Our hero doesn't just win by overpowering the opponent. The victory is cemented by demonstrating superior understanding, the very philosophy instilled by the mentor. It's the quiet mastery overriding the loud aggression. The resolution leaves us with the satisfying hum of balance restored, a promise that legacy isn't just about repeating the past, but about evolving its core truths for the next stage. The final shot often lingers on the shared nod between student and teacher, a timeless symbol of earned respect. The young protagonist, let us call him Leo, carries the perpetual shadow of a past he never truly inhabited, the myth of a legendary martial artist hanging over his every hesitant step. His initial attempts at defense are clumsy, born of instinctual panic rather than trained response, drawing the mocking laughter of his peers who view his presence in their esteemed academy as an unwelcome dilution of standards. Leo is clearly the outsider, his attire slightly off-key, his energy too scattered, reflecting the nervous energy of a newcomer thrust onto a stage too brightly lit. The mentor figure, an older gentleman whose name carries weight within certain circles, but who now prefers the solitude of his modest workshop, initially views Leo with a weary skepticism. This isn't the stoic simplicity of a Miyagi. This mentor, perhaps a former champion whose career was cut short by an injury that never truly healed, possesses a sharper, more cynical edge. His inspiration seems drawn less from serene nature walks and more from the hard-won knowledge of betrayal within the martial arts community. He sees in Leo not just potential, but a chance for redemption, a project to prove that true skill transcends the flashy marketing hype that now saturates the sport. The antagonist, a figure of almost sculpted perfection in their movements, embodies the modern pursuit of perfection, devoid of humility. Their training sessions, glimpsed through high-tech observation portals, are relentless, focusing on biomechanical efficiency. This adversary, perhaps the inheritor of a global fitness empire built around martial arts branding, views the tournament as a necessary marketing vehicle. Their motivation is entirely external, maintaining status, fulfilling endorsement contracts, proving the superiority of their highly expensive, data-driven training regime over anything organic or heartfelt. Leo's early failures are excruciating to watch. There is the inevitable moment where he tries to apply a newly taught, simple block against a complex flurry, only to be instantly overwhelmed, resulting in a jarring fall that sends vibrations through the very floorboards of the dojo. The emotion that courses through him then is raw frustration, the deep-seated fear that he simply isn't built for this life. The mentor responds not with anger, but with a quiet, almost surgical redirection of focus. He forces Leo into tasks seemingly unrelated to combat, perhaps restoring delicate antique machinery, demanding absolute precision and patience, teaching Leo that control over one's own breath and internal rhythm precedes control over an opponent. This echoes the foundational lessons of finding peace before power, but transposed into a narrative where time is a commodity and perfection is expected instantly. The emotional core of the narrative strengthens through the bonds Leo forges with his support system, a small group of fellow students who might be deemed underdogs by the elite academies. They share whispered secrets in the locker rooms, their shared vulnerability creating an unbreakable chain. One friend might be struggling with the pressure of family expectations. Another might be navigating complex personal loss. These interactions infuse Leo's journey with necessary empathy, ensuring that when he steps into the ring, he fights not just for himself, but for the integrity of this small, authentic community. The final bout transcends mere physicality. It becomes a dialogue where Leo articulates his growth through movement, demonstrating that the elegance of technique is inseparable from the sincerity of the intention behind it. The crescendo of the narrative builds not just in the intensity of the physical confrontations, but in the profound psychological shift within Leo. We observe the transformation from reactive panic to proactive calm, a process often catalyzed by the mentor forcing Leo into moments of controlled crisis. Imagine a scene where Leo is blindfolded and tasked with catching falling, fragile objects, a task demanding absolute sensory reliance on internal timing rather than visual confirmation. The mentor watches impassively, his past scars perhaps whispering caution against Leo rushing the process. This deliberate slowing down, this forced internalization of time, is where the magic happens. Leo stops trying to beat the opponent and starts aiming to inhabit the moment of confrontation perfectly. The antagonist, whose name might as well be synonymous with flawless execution, begins to show subtle cracks under the unrelenting spotlight of media scrutiny surrounding the grand tournament. Off-camera, away from the cameras capturing his perfect form, there are fleeting moments glimpsed of near obsession, perhaps a tremor in his hand after a flawless run-through, suggesting the heavy toll of maintaining an unsustainable facade of invincibility. His inspiration stems from a documented history of martial arts supremacy within his family line, a legacy so oppressive it chokes out any genuine joy in his practice. He isn't training to evolve. He is training to maintain an existing, brittle monument. As Leo progresses, his emotional landscape broadens beyond mere self-doubt. He grapples with the temptation to adopt the flashier, more aggressive tactics favored by his peers, and sometimes even suggested by his overzealous supporters. This internal struggle, authenticity versus expediency, is a powerful dramatic thread. He recalls moments when his mentor patiently broke down a single, seemingly mundane movement, revealing layers of interconnected physics and philosophy, contrasting sharply with the antagonist's focus on maximizing impact per millisecond. This is the core conflict of the modern age meeting ancient wisdom, efficiency versus essence. The pivotal semi-final match showcases this divergence brilliantly. Leo, having internalized the lesson of yielding to overcome force, executes a defense that looks almost passive, absorbing the aggressor's energy and redirecting it with minimal expenditure. The audience, conditioned by years of high-impact spectacle, initially reacts with confusion, but the mentor's serene expression confirms that this subtle dance is the true victory. It is the triumph of strategy over raw power, a quiet rebellion against the expectation of maximal force. The final confrontation against the polished champion is less a fight and more a philosophical debate enacted with fists and feet. The champion unleashes a barrage of technically flawless, high-scoring moves, each one aimed not at injuring, but at demoralizing through sheer impossibility of defense. Leo remains rooted, his breath deep and steady, a visible manifestation of the discipline instilled by his mentor's unconventional methods. The winning move, when it finally comes, is not a revolutionary new technique, but a perfect application of the very first lesson he learned, balance achieved through absolute presence. It is a simple counter-move, executed with the weight of his entire journey behind it, causing the champion's meticulously constructed defense to shatter under the pressure of its own rigidity. The aftermath is not explosive celebration, but a shared moment of understanding. The champion finally sees the emptiness of his manufactured perfection, and Leo understands the true cost and reward of earning one's mastery. The true denouement unfolds not in the roar of the crowd or the flash of cameras, but in the quiet aftermath, a space where legacies are truly defined. Leo, standing taller not due to muscle mass but because the internal landscape has settled, feels the profound relief that comes after holding a difficult truth steady for an extended period. He approaches his mentor, who offers no gushing praise, instead simply adjusting the frayed collar of Leo's training gi, a small, almost paternal gesture speaking volumes more than any prepared speech ever could. This moment signifies the passing of the torch, not as a transfer of power, but as a confirmation of shared understanding. The student has internalized the art to the point where the teacher's presence is no longer a necessary crutch. The fallout for the antagonist is perhaps the most nuanced part of the story's conclusion. Stripped of the victory that served as the linchpin for his entire carefully curated public image, we see a brief, haunting glimpse into his isolation. The cameras are gone, the sponsors momentarily quiet, and the champion is left alone with the machinery of his own excessive training, the specialized equipment now mocking him with its cold, impersonal efficiency. His motivation shifts from defending a title to desperately searching for the genuine spark he sacrificed for the sake of appearances. This reveals the underlying tragedy of many modern pursuits of excellence. The focus on external validation over internal fulfillment leaves the victor hollowed out. Leo's next steps are deliberately understated. There is no immediate ascent to global stardom or endorsement deals flooding his inbox. Instead, he returns to the small, unassuming dojo, finding a new purpose in integrating the philosophy he learned with the traditions already present in the space. He starts mentoring the younger students who were initially skeptical of him, employing the same patience and seemingly irrelevant tasks his own mentor used. We see him teaching precision not through complex forms, but through simple acts. Ensuring a stack of wooden blocks remains perfectly aligned while he speaks, demanding focus on the minute details that build the macroscopic structure. The relationship between Leo and his mentor evolves into one of mutual respect across generations. The mentor, having seen his wisdom validated not through his own career but through the success of this unlikely student, finally seems at peace, perhaps finally releasing the weight of his own past disappointments. His inspiration turns towards preserving the integrity of the art, ensuring that the next wave doesn't mistake spectacle for substance. This quiet resolution suggests that the true legend status isn't achieved in winning a singular tournament, but in successfully transmitting an enduring, authentic value system to the next generation, ensuring the ripple effect of good teaching outlives any competitive scorecard. The final image lingers on the repaired machinery in the mentor's workshop, now running smoothly, symbolizing the healed past and the perfectly tuned future. The passing of time in the narrative is subtle, marked less by calendar pages and more by the deepening lines of understanding on Leo's face and the increased stillness in his mentor's posture. Leo's commitment to integrating the philosophy transforms the humble dojo from a mere training ground into a genuine crucible of character. He doesn't just replicate his mentor's methods, he adapts them, recognizing that today's anxieties require different anchors than those of the previous generation. For instance, when confronting a newer student struggling with digital distraction, a direct descendant of the external pressures Leo himself faced, Leo introduces a meditation technique focused on sensory deprivation within a controlled soundscape, proving that the principle of focused presence is infinitely adaptable. The mentor, observing these quiet innovations, reveals a deeper layer of his own history. It is disclosed, perhaps through a shared, almost accidental memory invoked by an old photograph, that his past competitive failure wasn't just an injury, but a crisis of faith. A moment where he chose a path dictated by ego rather than the genuine art, leading to the career-ending setback. This context enriches his dedication to Leo. He is not merely teaching a technique. He is atoning for a past misstep by ensuring his student walks the path of integrity. His inspiration, now fully realized, is altruistic, a final act of crafting something pure from the lessons learned through profound error. Meanwhile, the former antagonist, now stripped bare of his championship veneer, begins a reluctant, anonymous journey toward self-discovery, mirroring the early struggles of Leo, but without the benefit of a guiding hand. He is seen briefly, perhaps in a stark, utilitarian gym far from the glamour of his former training complex, attempting fundamental exercises with clumsy desperation. The sculpted perfection has given way to raw fatigue, and the realization dawns that when the scoreboard goes dark, the discipline maintained purely for external reward vanishes like smoke. His path will clearly be one of arduous, lonely rediscovery, focusing not on winning, but simply on doing correctly. Leo's impact extends beyond the dojo walls in unforeseen ways. His quiet, earned confidence begins to shift the social dynamic of the community. Those who once mocked him now seek his advice on personal discipline or navigating high-pressure situations, recognizing that his strength isn't aggressive, it's resilient. This burgeoning reputation as a thoughtful leader, rather than just a skilled fighter, solidifies his legend status within the local sphere. He becomes the embodiment of internal victory, translating to external respect, a contrast to the champion who experienced the reverse. The concluding narrative arc focuses on the enduring nature of mentorship itself. Leo, now finding genuine satisfaction in guiding others, finally understands that the ultimate demonstration of mastery is fostering mastery in someone else. The final scene might show Leo and his mentor standing side by side, not in readiness for a fight, but side by side overseeing a class of diverse students. There is no need for dialogue. The air is thick with the shared, unspoken agreement that the essence of the martial way, respect, patience, and truth, has been successfully navigated through another generation, securing a legacy not of trophies, but of transmitted wisdom. The atmosphere settles into a deep, comfortable rhythm, the kind that only comes after a major storm has passed and the earth has drunk its fill. Leo's teaching style develops a lyrical quality, reflecting the profound internalization of his mentor's lessons. He often utilizes storytelling, weaving historical anecdotes of martial arts masters, not the celebrated victors, but the steadfast practitioners who guarded knowledge through dark times into his instruction. This storytelling serves to humanize the immense pressure, framing discipline not as a burden, but as a necessary act of self-preservation against the chaos of the outside world. He recognizes that contemporary anxiety often stems from information overload, so his primary tool becomes simplifying complexity back to its essential, actionable core. The mentor, now visibly lighter, begins to shed the last vestiges of his cynical armor. He starts participating in the general upkeep of the dojo, tasks he previously delegated or ignored, finding a quiet dignity in manual labor that mirrors the humility he taught Leo. One moving detail emerges. He begins carving small stylized wooden tokens, not trophies, but simple tokens of gratitude, for students who demonstrate exceptional perseverance over flashiness. These tokens, slightly imperfect due to his age-stiffened hands, become far more coveted than any championship medal could ever be, symbolizing that worth is found in the attempt and the honesty of the effort, not the flawless result. The antagonist's isolated rehabilitation offers a poignant counterpoint. Whispers reach the dojo, not of a comeback, but of quiet humility. The champion is rumored to be working in obscurity, perhaps even volunteering his advanced physical knowledge at a community center for underprivileged youth, using his imposing physique not for intimidation, but for motivation rooted in genuine care. This involuntary mentorship, forced by his fall from grace, begins to teach him the very lessons of service and authenticity he once dismissed. The emotional complexity here is significant. His path back to personal integrity will likely be slower and far less glamorous than Leo's swift ascent, precisely because his starting point was so inflated by vanity. Leo's personal evolution culminates in a moment of profound realization about his own narrative. He understands that his initial feeling of being an outsider wasn't a flaw to be corrected, but a necessary vantage point. Being outside the established system allowed him to see its weaknesses clearly, enabling him to adopt methods that the tradition-bound insiders would have rejected prematurely. This acceptance of his outsider status becomes his greatest strength, a source of continuous innovation tempered by respect for the past. The ultimate legacy of this iteration of the Karate Kid story rests on its quiet defiance of spectacle. When the final scenes unfold, perhaps years later, Leo is not the world champion, but a respected pillar of his community. He might be shown engaging in a casual, effortless demonstration with one of his own students, a student perhaps mirroring Leo's initial hesitation, where the technique flows so naturally that it seems almost invisible. The true victory is the continuity. The knowledge has passed through the fire of modern scrutiny and emerged purified, proving that the legend isn't about the next fight, but about ensuring the principles survive long after the spotlight fades. The inspiration lives on in the steady, unwavering commitment to the how over the what. The enduring legacy of Leo and his mentor manifests itself in a subtle but profound shift in the local martial arts landscape. The established academies, once rigid in their adherence to outdated or overly commercialized methodologies, begin to show fissures. Parents, observing the sustained positive impact on the character and mental fortitude of Leo's small group of students, start questioning the purely results-driven approach of the elite schools. They are drawn not by televised highlights, but by the palpable sense of self-possession radiating from Leo's pupils, a quiet assurance that transcends winning or losing. The mentor, whose name is now spoken with reverent affection rather than fearful respect, finds immense satisfaction in Leo's teaching philosophy, which he describes as applied empathy. He spends his days refining the workshop, now a place of pilgrimage for those seeking counsel on discipline beyond fighting, business owners seeking focus, artists battling creative blocks. He uses the intricate mechanics of clockwork and antique tools as analogies for patience, emphasizing that rushing the process of assembly or repair invariably leads to breakage, a metaphor that resonates deeply with anyone trying to build a stable life. Leo, having fully embraced the responsibility of stewardship, develops a unique cross-disciplinary program. He partners with local educators to introduce elements of kinetic awareness and mindfulness into early childhood education, effectively inoculating the next generation against the kind of superficial pressures that nearly derailed his own journey. This expansion of his influence demonstrates that the true mastery taught in that small dojo was never about striking power, but about achieving perfect internal alignment, which naturally manifests as effectiveness in any endeavor. The former antagonist, following his long, arduous path of anonymity, eventually finds a small, almost accidental opportunity for redemption. He is not seen returning to competitive circuits, but rather using his extraordinary physical discipline to assist in search and rescue operations, where precise, controlled movements under extreme duress are paramount. His actions are selfless, guided by the raw necessity of saving a life, a stark contrast to his past motivation rooted in ego. This organic purpose, serving a clear, non-competitive need, finally grants him the internal peace that years of winning could not provide. He never seeks out Leo or the mentor, understanding that his redemption must be earned entirely on his own terms, a quiet acknowledgement of the separate but parallel journeys of self-discovery. The final image that solidifies the continuation of this legend is cyclical. Leo, now a mature figure himself, is seen observing a brand new student, perhaps a child exhibiting the same fearful hesitation Leo once did, attempting a foundational stance. Instead of correcting the posture immediately, Leo simply sits beside the child, mirroring the stance perfectly, holding his own position with unwavering calm for several minutes in total silence. It is a demonstration not of technique, but of presence. The message is clear. The greatest legends are not those who dominate, but those who cultivate the environment where genuine mastery can take root and flourish independently, season after season. The philosophy endures, not through codified scrolls, but through shared stillness. The passage of years has etched a narrative of quiet authority onto Leo, replacing the nervous energy of his youth with a grounded certainty that requires no outward demonstration. He moves through his community not as a former champion, but as a trusted artisan of character. His interactions are marked by a profound economy of words. He has learned that true communication often occurs in the sustained silences between spoken sentences, echoing the unspoken lessons exchanged with his own mentor. This mastery of stillness has become his defining characteristic, a shield against the persistent clamor of the modern world that continually seeks to pull focus. The mentor, having achieved a form of contented retirement from active teaching, dedicates his time to documenting the lineage, not in glossy books detailing victories, but in handwritten ledgers, detailing the small, almost imperceptible breakthroughs of every student who passed through their doors. These ledgers are filled with observations on patience, humility, and the management of frustration, effectively creating a counter-history to the mainstream narrative of martial arts as pure aggression. His inspiration now flows entirely into the archival purity of their shared work, ensuring the lessons are documented with the precision he once demanded in combat. He views this task as his final, most crucial defense against the dilution of true discipline. The impact of Leo's philosophy on the broader community begins to bear unexpected fruit. Local businesses, having integrated Leo's mindfulness concepts into their organizational structures, report lower attrition rates and higher levels of sustained, focused productivity. The very vocabulary of the town subtly changes. Terms like finding your center or the power of the necessary pause enter common parlance, adopted from the dojo floor into the boardroom. This societal osmosis proves that the legend isn't confined to the mat, it's a methodology for living well. The former antagonist, now operating in the demanding and often thankless environment of disaster relief, experiences an epiphany through sheer physical exhaustion and necessity. During a critical rescue operation where technical skill alone could not suffice, he is forced to rely on intuitive, empathetic communication with a terrified victim. In that moment of pure, selfless action, the engineered perfection of his past life dissolves. He doesn't achieve a new technique. He achieves genuine connection, a humanizing moment that finally settles the score with his own legacy. This rebirth is entirely private, a victory known only to the dust and the silence of the wreckage. Leo's final defining act of teaching transcends the physical entirely. He organizes a communal event, not a tournament, but a large-scale collaborative project, perhaps the restoration of a historic community landmark. The process demands every student utilize their unique strengths, practicing patience, precise measurement, and respectful compromise, all under Leo's guiding eye. He demonstrates that true martial skill is the ability to integrate seamlessly into a larger structure for a common good. The realization dawns that the greatest opponent he ever faced was the internal resistance to interdependence. The film concludes with Leo observing the completed, restored landmark, standing strong against the elements, realizing that the true legend lies in building something enduring with others, a shared foundation more solid than any individual victory. The quiet sense of communal accomplishment settles over the restored landmark, a physical manifestation of the shared discipline cultivated over years. Leo, standing amidst the community he helped solidify, feels a sense of completion that is paradoxically open-ended. He notices a young girl, perhaps a relative of one of the initial skeptical students, carefully sanding a piece of wood with meticulous attention, her brow furrowed in concentration that mirrors the mentor's own focused precision from years prior. This quiet observation is Leo's reward, the visual proof that the lessons have transcended mere memorization and become instinctual behavior. The mentor, now frail but radiating an almost luminous contentment, watches Leo from a distance. He no longer needs to correct. His presence is simply one of benediction. He recognizes that Leo has achieved a state his own competitive drive never allowed him to reach. Complete integration of spirit and action without the shadow of external need. The mentor's final inspiration is channeled through his ledger entries, which now exclusively focus on philosophical interpretations of their shared journey, writing prose so refined they verge on poetry, designed not for future students, but as a personal meditation on a life well spent correcting a trajectory. The impact of Leo's community-based approach subtly redefines local concepts of success. The emphasis shifts from individual athletic achievement to collective resilience. Local businesses that adopted Leo's principles begin subtly sponsoring community infrastructure projects rather than elite sports teams, understanding that a well-balanced employee or citizen contributes more sustainably than a narrowly focused champion. This cultural drift is slow, organic, and resistant to commercialization, precisely because it is rooted in verifiable internal change rather than fleeting external hype. The former antagonist, whose journey of redemption remains largely unseen by the public, sends a single, anonymous gift to the dojo, a perfectly crafted antique gyroscope, spinning with flawless, silent equilibrium. It is a silent admission of defeat in the realm of ego, and an acknowledgement of the beauty found in pure, unadulterated balance, the very concept he neglected in his pursuit of aggressive perfection. The mentor recognizes the object instantly, smiles faintly, and places it atop his ledger, a silent testament that even the most rigidly constructed defenses can be corrected by an honest desire for truth. Leo, taking over the full custodianship of the dojo's ethos, looks at the young girl still patiently sanding the wood. He does not approach her immediately. Instead, he retrieves a small, beautifully carved wooden token from the mentor, one of the first, slightly uneven ones, and places it gently near her workspace. He walks away, knowing that the ultimate demonstration of their shared legend is not a final match, but the enduring, patient cultivation of integrity across generations, ensuring that the quiet strength they built will continue to define what it truly means to be a master. The narrative concludes not with a grand declaration, but with the sound of steady, rhythmic sanding continuing into the twilight, symbolizing the endless, peaceful labor of self-improvement. The twilight years of Leo's direct mentorship transition seamlessly into his role as the quiet foundation of the community's ethos. He embraces the responsibility of legacy not as a crown to be worn, but as soil to be nurtured. His days are no longer structured around grueling training schedules, but around the gentle, almost invisible work of reinforcing connection. Leo's inspiration stems now from observing the ripple effects of kindness and patience in the everyday lives of those he touched. The steady hand of a former student managing a crisis at the local clinic, or the unwavering focus of a young parent mastering a complex new skill set to better provide for their family. These are the true victories he champions. The mentor, his physical presence now a cherished memory, leaves behind the beautifully curated ledgers, which Leo treats as sacred texts. These documents become the centerpiece of the dojo's archives, rarely read cover to cover, but often consulted in moments of philosophical uncertainty. Leo finds that the mentor's handwriting itself, the slight tremor in the later entries, the deliberate care taken with each character, is a lesson in aging with grace and purpose. The realization dawns on Leo that the mentor's final act was to perfectly document the process of becoming, rather than the product of achievement. The landscape of martial arts, though still prone to flashy exhibitions, has a noticeable pocket of resistance emanating from Leo's community, a space defined by its refusal to chase ephemeral trends. When a corporate entity attempts to commission a high-profile branded martial arts demonstration in the town square, Leo declines respectfully, offering instead a public workshop on basic ergonomics and stress reduction, framed as the art of standing firm. The public, having witnessed the depth of Leo's sincerity over the years, overwhelmingly prefers the authentic offering, causing the corporate demonstration to feel hollow and poorly attended by comparison. The former champion, now truly anonymous in his service role, achieves a profound understanding of humility through arduous anonymous labor. He eventually finds himself working alongside an older volunteer on a remote project, and in the shared exhaustion of manual effort, the psychological barriers between them crumble. He confesses, without seeking absolution, the emptiness of his manufactured peak. This interaction serves as a crucial, unseen validation for Leo's entire philosophy. True change requires shedding the armor before the healing can begin. In the final contemplation of his own journey, Leo understands that he is no longer seeking to emulate his mentors, but rather to exist as a bridge. He is the embodiment of tradition, successfully navigating modernity without sacrificing its soul. He looks towards the future not with fear of what new challenges might arise, but with confidence in the principles he has anchored in the community. The legend is complete when Leo realizes that the story doesn't require a final dramatic confrontation. It simply requires the continuous, quiet application of earned wisdom. The final shot is of the dojo doors opening early one morning, not to Leo practicing a fighting form, but to him sweeping the entryway with deliberate, mindful strokes, preparing the space for the next soul who might need to learn how to stand still. The ritual of the morning sweep becomes Leo's most potent teaching tool. He performs it with an almost meditative concentration, his movements fluid and economical, a living testament to the principle that mastery resides not in complexity, but in the perfect execution of simplicity. The sound of the straw broom on the aged wooden floor is the new soundtrack of the dojo, a rhythmic counterpoint to the distant, ceaseless hum of the digitized world outside. For the new students who arrive, Leo's presence is less intimidating than his mentor's once was. He embodies accessibility, demonstrating that immense internal power can coexist with gentle demeanor. Leo incorporates the mentor's archival ledgers into a new curriculum segment he titles The Geography of Failure. He doesn't hide the mentor's past competitive missteps or his own early stumbles. Instead, he uses these documented moments of weakness as topographical maps, guiding students through the treacherous terrain of self-doubt and ego. He emphasizes that the true strength of their lineage lies in the ability to fail, document the error, and integrate the lesson without letting shame calcify into paralysis. This transparency fosters an environment of radical honesty, a stark contrast to the curated perfection celebrated elsewhere. The community's embrace of these authentic values creates an unforeseen economic benefit. Tourists and visitors, weary of overhyped attractions, begin seeking out the quiet authenticity of Leo's dojo for workshops on mental fortitude and stress management. These visitors aren't looking for fight choreography. They are looking for Leo's calm, seeking the secret to enduring the volatility of modern life. Leo capitalizes on this interest not by scaling up the physical training, but by creating highly focused, short-duration retreats centered entirely on presence and breathwork, ensuring the core message remains untainted by commercial expansion. The former champion, having found his peace in selfless service, surfaces one last time, not in person, but through action. A catastrophic regional event strains emergency services, and reports filter back about an anonymous, incredibly disciplined volunteer whose physical stamina and cool under pressure save multiple lives. Though never identified by name, the description of his focused, non-aggressive strength immediately suggests his identity to those who followed the old competitive circuit. He has, in essence, redefined his victory, achieving the ultimate application of physical discipline in the service of life, a profound reversal of his earlier goal to dominate opponents. Leo hears these fragmented reports and feels a deep, unspoken sense of closure. He doesn't need to meet the man. The proof of the philosophy's efficacy is in the redeemed life being lived. He gathers his current cohort of students, not for combat practice but for a shared moment of gratitude directed towards the unseen effort of others. He tells them, "The measure of our art is not how powerfully we can strike, but how gently we can mend." This becomes the final, unofficial creed passed down. The legend of the Karate Kid, in this iteration, dissolves the idea of the lone hero, cementing itself instead as a self-sustaining ecosystem of disciplined empathy, quietly fortifying the world, one mindful breath at a time. The atmosphere in the dojo now possesses the weight of settled dust, mingled with the scent of polished wood and enduring purpose, a sacred space maintained by generations of intention. Leo, standing at the threshold of late middle age, moves with an almost liquid grace, the kind that suggests his bones have learned the geometry of efficiency better than any muscle ever could. His face, lined not by stress, but by countless moments of deep contemplation, reflects a profound inner sunlight. He has become, quite literally, the quiet center of his community, the living embodiment of the sustained pause. Leo's teaching methodology has evolved into an almost esoteric practice of minimalism. He often instructs students to spend entire sessions focused on a single, isolated movement, a hand position, a shift of weight, demanding that they explore its potential for stillness and power until the movement itself seems to vanish, leaving only pure potentiality behind. He explains that modern life constantly forces them to multitask, but true strength demands the courage to give everything to one thing, even if that thing is just breathing correctly. The emotional resonance in the room during these sessions is palpable, a collective shedding of the need to perform, replaced by the quiet joy of being precise. The mentor's ledgers, now housed in a climate-controlled minimalist display case, are treated with the reverence usually reserved for ancient scrolls. Leo occasionally invites select students to examine the brittle pages, pointing out the detailed notes on flawed forms and the mentor's harsh self-criticism. He uses these documented failures to teach the concept of honorable decay, that everything, even discipline, must evolve or risk becoming rigid and breaking. This acknowledgement of the mentor's human fallibility deepens Leo's respect, transforming the teacher from a distant icon into a fellow traveler on a difficult path. The former champion's anonymous dedication to service becomes a source of silent inspiration for Leo. Though they never cross paths, the knowledge that the antagonist has found genuine purpose through suffering acts as a final reassurance. Leo sees this as the ultimate proof of the mentor's teaching, that the raw material of a flawed life, when subjected to rigorous, selfless application, can be refined into something noble. It validates the mentor's cynicism, that one must break down the ego before true rebuilding can commence. Leo's final, most significant contribution to the martial arts world is not the creation of a new style, but the dismantling of the competitive framework that once threatened him. He spearheads a movement advocating for mentorship grants, funding that supports the quiet transmission of tradition over high-stakes tournament winnings. He argues that the true measure of an art form is its ability to sustain itself authentically outside the glare of spectacle. His quiet influence shifts resources away from expensive branding and back toward grassroots teaching. The conclusion finds Leo presiding over the dojo, now staffed entirely by his dedicated, ethically driven students. He steps back from the daily instruction, his role evolving into that of a revered elder statesman, a guiding spirit rather than a primary instructor. He spends his time tending to the small garden behind the dojo, cultivating plants that thrive on consistency and natural cycles. The final, symbolic moment is one of profound peace. Leo witnesses one of his senior students effortlessly guiding a new, overly eager child through a basic breathing exercise. The student uses a voice devoid of judgment, a mirror of Leo's own demeanor. Leo turns away not to look at a trophy case but towards the horizon, understanding that the legend wasn't about winning a title, but about successfully establishing a permanent ecology of integrity where future generations could grow strong without ever needing to fight for validation. The silence that follows is complete, resonant, and unbroken. The narrative architecture of Karate Kid Legends 2025 immediately signals a deliberate, almost reverential return to the core themes that elevated the original 1984 masterpiece, while simultaneously attempting the difficult feat of updating those themes for a contemporary, digitally saturated world. The film hinges on the dynamic between a familiar fish-out-of-water scenario and the enduring, almost mythological status of its progenitors. The casting choices reflect this balancing act. The young protagonist, often burdened by the legacy they inherit, embodies a modern American youth struggling not just with bullies, but with the omnipresent anxiety of social media performance and the fleeting nature of online validation. This echoes the quiet alienation Daniel LaRusso experienced in Reseda, but amplified by the immediate, unforgiving spotlight of the 21st century. Their initial struggles are less about physical isolation and more about digital invisibility, or conversely, unwanted scrutiny. The mentor figure, perhaps a successor to Mr. Miyagi or even a reimagined Mr. Han from the 2010 iteration, carries the weight of tradition with a palpable weariness. Their past, hinted at through fragmented, evocative flashbacks, suggests a long history of enforcing discipline in an increasingly undisciplined world. Analyzing their professional trajectory, perhaps a former Olympian, a disillusioned martial arts master who sought anonymity, provides context for their reluctance. They see in the new student not just a chance for redemption, but a final opportunity to impart wisdom before their specific brand of holistic mentorship becomes entirely obsolete. This echoes the deep sense of responsibility seen in Pat Morita's performance, though filtered through a more cynical, modern lens where true dedication is rare. The film's approach to action sequences moves beyond simple choreography. While the iconic crane kick and sweeping low kicks remain visually referenced, the combat here is framed less as pure athleticism and more as a psychological battle. The antagonists, often representing a highly funded corporatized form of aggression, perhaps a dojo backed by venture capital or a team obsessed with measurable, quantifiable success, force the protagonist to embrace the spirit of the art rather than just its mechanics. The training montages, traditionally the film's emotional backbone, are surprisingly contemplative. Instead of merely polishing wax or painting fences, the modern equivalent involves digital detox, mastering breath control amidst constant notification pings, and understanding that true focus requires shutting down external noise. Visually, the cinematography contrasts the gritty, authentic textures of the aging master's training space with the slick, sterile environments favored by the opposition. This visual dichotomy serves as a constant reminder of the film's central ideological conflict: authenticity versus artifice. The music further underscores this, likely oscillating between nostalgic synthesizers referencing the 1980s score and modern ambient tracks emphasizing internal monologue. The film succeeds when it allows its central relationship to breathe, moving past the mandatory tournament arc. The moments where the mentor offers life advice divorced entirely from martial arts, perhaps discussing financial insecurity or the ethics of online reputation, are the true legends being forged here. It suggests that the Karate Kid template is not inherently about fighting, it is about finding a stable internal foundation capable of weathering external storms, a lesson perhaps more urgent now than it was 30 years ago. The final confrontation, therefore, should ideally feel less like a victory over an opponent and more like a successful integration of old wisdom into a new reality. The emotional resonance of this installment relies heavily on the mentor's internal landscape. One can easily envision this sense of inherited duty stemming from a career path that once promised fame but delivered only burnout. Perhaps they were a world-class martial artist whose dedication was ultimately exploited by the commercial sports machine, leading to a profound disillusionment with public displays of skill. This history translates into a deep-seated skepticism toward any display of flashiness or instant gratification displayed by the young protagonist. Their stoicism is not arrogance. It is a carefully constructed barrier against repeating past hurts, a professional necessity developed after years of watching idealism wither under competitive pressure. When they finally open up, perhaps over a shared, quiet meal prepared with painstaking care, a parallel to the meticulous nature of their training, the vulnerability is earned, drawing a direct line to the quiet dignity of Mr. Miyagi's own solitary life. The young protagonist, in turn, embodies a different kind of trauma. Their generation is expert at performance, but terrified of vulnerability. We see moments where the protagonist attempts to shortcut the training, perhaps trying to film a perfect 5-second demonstration of a complex block, only to have the mentor shatter the phone or simply walk away, not in anger, but in profound disappointment. This is the emotional crux. The student must learn that mastery is slow, internal, and fundamentally unshareable in the way modern platforms demand. Their internal monologue, frequently depicted through quick, fragmented shots of digital interfaces flashing warnings or criticisms, suggests a constant state of peripheral hypervigilance, the inability to simply be present. Their character arc is not about becoming a better fighter, but about achieving a state of mindful non-reaction. Furthermore, the antagonists are not just generalized bullies, they represent specific societal pressures. If the original film pitted blue-collar authenticity against privileged arrogance, Legends 2025 might pit genuine personal growth against algorithmic optimization. The head trainer of the rival dojo is likely someone who rose quickly through the ranks by leveraging data analytics to predict opponent weaknesses, viewing martial arts as a complex equation rather than an art form. This character's background could involve a stint in high-level corporate consulting or predictive modeling, making their style cold, efficient, and utterly devoid of empathy. Their motivations are purely systemic, maintaining market share in the local wellness, self-defense industry. The film's climax, therefore, risks feeling anticlimactic if it focuses solely on the trophy. A truly resonant conclusion would see the protagonist deliberately choose a path that rejects the validation of the arena. Perhaps in the final match, the protagonist realizes the opponent is overextended due to the mentor's subtle, off-the-cuff advice given moments before, a piece of wisdom about balance learned while tying a shoe, and chooses to disable the opponent non-violently, or simply bows out, having achieved their personal peace irrespective of the outcome. This subversion of the expected competitive payoff reinforces the film's commitment to legacy not as repetition, but as reinterpretation. The true legend is the one who changes the rules of engagement. The textural contrast in the film extends deeply into the mise-en-scène of the training itself. Where Miyagi's garage was defined by the smell of sawdust, car grease, and brine, the new mentor's sanctuary might be characterized by the quiet hum of antique air filtration systems and the faint scent of aged wood and specific rare teas. This physical environment forces a deceleration that the protagonist actively fights against. We might observe a scene where the new student, tasked with the mundane ritual of cleaning ancient training implements, attempts to speed the process by using a power tool, a symbolic attempt to bring modern efficiency to ancient patience, resulting in the tool being immediately confiscated and replaced with a simple, worn cloth. The mentor watches this exchange not with anger, but with the weary patience of someone who has seen the same impulse for instant gratification destroy careers. The emotional arc of the protagonist's social reintegration deserves further scrutiny. Their initial isolation isn't just about being new, it stems from a pre-existing digital exhaustion. They arrive skilled at presenting an image of success, perhaps a highly polished TikTok presence related to something innocuous like artisanal coffee or obscure fitness routines, but utterly incapable of handling genuine, unscripted interaction. The process of learning the forms becomes a forced meditation, a journey toward stripping away the layers of curated selfhood. There's a specific, potent sequence likely involving the protagonist attempting to teach the mentor a contemporary digital skill, perhaps setting up an optimized video profile only for the mentor to dismiss the entire endeavor with a single, perfectly executed slow-motion block that renders the protagonist's flashy movements utterly pointless. This exchange is their first genuine epiphany. True power lies in economy of motion, not extravagance of presentation. The mentor figure's background deepens if we consider their past career as a pioneer in martial arts pedagogy who tried to integrate technology for accessibility, only to see their innovations twisted into tools for exploitative, mass-marketed self-defense courses. Their current austerity is a penance. Their hands, often shown in close-up performing delicate tasks like repairing old leather grips or pruning a bonsai tree, carry visible scars, not from combat, but from years of wrestling with flawed systems and trying to maintain integrity within them. This makes their reluctance to engage with the protagonist more complex. They fear not only the student's failure, but the possibility that the student might succeed too loudly, thus drawing unwanted attention back to the mentor's own tarnished history. The evolution of the student's relationship with the rival group must also reflect a generational shift in conflict. The rivalry isn't just about defending a social standing, it's about defending one's ontological reality. The modern opponents likely utilize AI-driven scouting reports on the protagonist's past training attempts, finding subtle flaws in their stance that an unaugmented observer would miss. The ultimate triumph, therefore, should not be overpowering physical force, but intellectual and spiritual decoupling from the system that breeds such hyperanalysis. If the protagonist wins the final bout, it is perhaps by intentionally executing a move they know is technically inefficient, according to the algorithms, but spiritually correct, according to their training, a move that relies on human intuition, randomness, and the very imperfection the rival system seeks to eliminate. This cements the theme. The legends we celebrate are those who embrace the irreducible human element. The film's success ultimately hinges on how effectively it translates the concept of balance into a vocabulary accessible to a generation accustomed to immediate feedback loops. Balance in this context is more than just physical equilibrium. It is the calibration between the individual's self and the societal expectation placed upon them. We see this exploration manifest in the protagonist's attempts to reconcile their newfound, deliberate slowness with the constant societal demand for speed. For instance, a crucial sequence could involve the protagonist trying to meditate in a public space, a park or an unused rooftop, only to be constantly interrupted by loud, intrusive advertisements or drones filming for public consumption. Their training then shifts from mastering a physical kata to mastering the art of stillness within chaos. The mentor's teaching methodology reflects this updated understanding of adversity. Instead of solely relying on analog analogies, the fly in the water, the candle, the mentor might employ contemporary philosophical challenges disguised as simple tasks. Imagine the mentor presenting the student with two identical items, one of which is subtly watermarked or traceable, tasking the student with discerning the real from the replicated through purely sensory means, forcing a reliance on intuition over technology. This tests the student's ability to perceive authenticity beyond verifiable data, a direct counterpoint to the antagonist's reliance on quantifiable metrics. Emotionally, the film benefits from exploring the mentor's quiet grief over the loss of true community. Their isolation isn't just personal, it's cultural. They mourn a time when shared struggle fostered genuine loyalty, contrasting it with the transactional relationships prevalent today. This manifests in moments where the mentor observes the younger generation interacting digitally and expresses a profound sense of cultural dislocation, perhaps commenting that they understand how to defeat an opponent but no longer understand how to build an alliance. This undercurrent of existential loneliness elevates the mentor from a mere instructor to a tragic custodian of vanishing values. The narrative thread concerning the antagonist's inevitable downfall must avoid cliché. Their defeat should not stem from a momentary lapse in skill, but from an inherent structural weakness in their hyper-optimized approach. If the rival group relies on perfect anticipation based on past data, the protagonist wins by introducing an element of genuine, unrehearsed emotional risk. A move born from sudden empathy, confusion, or even intentional self-sabotage that the predictive models cannot account for. This suggests that the final lesson imparted by the mentor is perhaps the most difficult, embracing the strategic advantage of being wholly, unpredictably human, flaws and all. The enduring legend, then, is the refusal to be categorized or optimized. The internal conflict within the protagonist is further complicated by their academic or early career trajectory, which likely clashes severely with the discipline demanded by true mastery. If they are a computer science major or working a demanding entry-level tech job, the clash is between the abstract, instantaneous gratification of coding or problem-solving versus the agonizingly slow, embodied learning of the martial art. This internal struggle manifests in the classroom or the dojo as an impatience to skip prerequisites. They might try to code a program to analyze the opponent's fight patterns, only for the mentor to destroy the laptop, not out of Luddite fear, but because the student is seeking outsourced wisdom instead of internalized understanding. This fuels a recurring emotional motif, the student's deep-seated fear that if they slow down, they will fall irrevocably behind their peers who are rapidly accumulating digital capital. The mentor's inspiration, subtly woven into the background, likely draws not just from a historical martial arts figure, but from a figure who successfully navigated profound societal shifts, perhaps an artist who refused to commercialize their vision, or a scientist who publicly denounced a flawed but popular theory. This explains their unwavering commitment to process over product. We see this when the mentor assigns a task that seems utterly unrelated to fighting, such as meticulously restoring a broken piece of antique furniture or learning to differentiate between various natural fibers by touch, forcing the student to engage their sensory apparatus, bypassing the overstimulated visual cortex. The underlying message is that mastery over the self requires mastery over the small, tedious realities of the physical world. The dynamic with the antagonist's entourage is crucial for showing the pervasive nature of the modern conflict. The rivals aren't just physically strong, they are socially influential. They might deploy psychological warfare through targeted online harassment or creating deepfakes designed to undermine the protagonist's credibility before major events. This forces the protagonist to develop a resilience that mirrors the ancient defensive postures, an internal fortress that cannot be breached by external commentary. The emotional weight of this harassment is often channeled through the protagonist's interactions with their own small circle of remaining real-life friends, who struggle to understand why the protagonist suddenly views their phones as weapons rather than tools. When the film addresses the lineage of the art itself, it becomes clear that the mentor is wrestling with a crisis of canon. They are not just teaching fighting, they are curating memory. The mentor might share a personal story about a moment where a supposed master used a recognized technique incorrectly out of arrogance, leading to disaster. This confession serves two purposes. It humanizes the mentor's past professional failures and provides a blueprint for the student on how to deliberately deviate from expected forms when necessary. The legend being celebrated in Karate Kid Legends 2025 is thus the legend of intentional, ethically informed improvisation, standing firmly against the tide of mass-produced, algorithmically sound mediocrity. The final confrontation, if it occurs, must feel like a quiet liberation from the expectation to perform, rather than a boisterous victory for the crowd. The film deepens the sensory aspect of the training, moving beyond mere physical exertion to explore how the modern environment actively sabotages mindfulness. A particularly effective scene might involve the protagonist attempting the classic stance exercises near a busy commuter hub or an area saturated with wireless signals. The resulting psychological strain, the invisible assault of data transmission and ambient noise, is visualized not through overt distress, but through subtle physical tells. A slight tremor in the hand holding the posture, an involuntary widening of the eyes. The mentor observes this not by commanding silence, but by introducing an antithetical element, perhaps a finely tuned tuning fork that emits a pure, unadulterated frequency, grounding the student in a single, verifiable sensory input amidst the surrounding digital cacophony. This is the mentor's counter-programming, finding the signal within the noise. The protagonist's emerging emotional maturity is tied directly to their capacity for sustained, unrewarded effort. In a pivotal moment, contrasting their past life, we might see them abandon a highly lucrative, low-effort online gig, a sponsorship or a viral post opportunity, because the time commitment conflicts with a scheduled, highly demanding, and seemingly pointless training regimen, like endlessly sweeping the same patch of ground until the grain of the stone is memorized. Their peers view this choice as career suicide. The mentor views it as the first genuine act of self-possession. This shift recalibrates the protagonist's internal success metric from external visibility to internal integrity. The characterization of the rival faction's leader needs to address the seductive nature of outsourced self-improvement. This antagonist isn't driven by malice in the traditional sense, but by a zealous belief in optimization theory. Their background could involve a successful career in high-frequency trading or high-performance computing, where incremental advantage derived from minute data processing yields massive returns. They see the protagonist's raw talent as inefficient data waiting to be processed. Their fighting style is characterized by perfect counter-timing derived from predictive modeling, making them eerily robotic. Their emotional deficit is that they never have to truly adapt in the moment, they only execute projections. The emotional weight of the film swells during the moments when the mentor's own past sacrifices become clear. We might learn the mentor once sacrificed a relationship, perhaps a marriage or a deep friendship, to protect a secret lineage or a crucial piece of knowledge from falling into the wrong, commercially minded hands. This personal cost explains their current solitary existence. When the protagonist finally breaks through a personal barrier, the mentor's reaction isn't triumphal shouting, but a quiet, profound acknowledgement. Perhaps a slight nod or the sharing of a single treasured heirloom that signifies they have successfully passed on not just a technique, but a burden of custodianship. The ultimate narrative resolution must reject the simple dichotomy of winner and loser. If the final match occurs, the true victory lies in the protagonist's ability to force the opponent to deviate from their optimized script. This happens when the protagonist introduces an element of profound human unpredictability, a sudden intentional vulnerability that the data cannot parse, causing the rival's system to momentarily freeze or overload. The audience leaves understanding that the legend is not about perfecting a style created by others, but about forging a new, ethically grounded style that honors the past while remaining inherently free from the constraints of the present technological moment. The true legend is the one who masters the art of becoming unreadable. The film subtly weaves a commentary on cultural appropriation versus cultural reverence through the protagonist's background. If the young student is not of the primary cultural heritage associated with the martial art being studied, their journey becomes an exploration of respectful adoption versus superficial mimicry. Their initial encounters with the art are likely framed through online tutorials or stylized depictions in media, illustrating how easily sacred knowledge can be reduced to marketable content. The mentor, deeply aware of this history, acts as a gatekeeper of context, constantly emphasizing that technique, divorced from understanding, is mere gymnastics. This subplot provides crucial emotional texture, as the protagonist must earn the right to practice, not just through effort, but through demonstrating genuine humility toward the source tradition. They must prove they value the why more than the how. This quest for context leads to an arc where the protagonist uncovers artifacts or records of the mentor's earlier attempts to share this wisdom, finding evidence that previous students failed because they prioritized external validation, trophies, social media recognition, or career advancement over internal transformation. These discoveries fuel the protagonist's resolve, making their training feel like a personal atonement for the failures of the past. The weight of expectation shifts from pleasing the mentor to honoring the integrity of the entire tradition they represent. The antagonist's operational philosophy demands a closer look at modern performance metrics. They are not content with winning. They seek validation through documented, reproducible success across multiple variables. Their dojo likely boasts proprietary software that tracks heart rate variability, micro-muscle activation, and reaction times, presenting results in sleek dashboards. Their greatest fear, therefore, is the irrational, the spontaneous act that defies data modeling. The protagonist's development of an erratic, almost improvisational movement style late in the film is a direct existential threat to the rival leader, whose entire professional ethos is built upon the predictability of human response. The emotional climax outside the main conflict might involve the protagonist choosing to use their newfound discipline to resolve a conflict entirely unrelated to martial arts, perhaps intervening calmly during a public confrontation rooted in online misunderstanding, using precise, non-violent de-escalation techniques learned from breath control. This demonstration of practical wisdom, witnessed by skeptical peers, solidifies the true meaning of their legend: competence applied ethically, not just competitively. It is the moment the student transcends the need for the arena entirely, achieving the level of wisdom where the fight is often over before it truly begins. Finally, The film's visual language should emphasize the relationship between the body and technology. Close-ups of the protagonist's calloused, hard-working hands contrast sharply with the smooth, glass surfaces of the digital world they are learning to tune out. The mentor's teaching often involves working with natural materials, wood, stone, earth, forcing tactile engagement. The final image of the film should encapsulate this synthesis, the protagonist achieving perfect stillness, perhaps silhouetted against a sunset, their face devoid of distraction, indicating that the true legend is not about overcoming an opponent, but about successfully navigating the labyrinth of modern distraction to find a sustainable, quiet core of selfhood. The exploration of cultural reverence deepens when considering the mentor's personal philosophy regarding lineage. The mentor is likely not merely preserving techniques, but actively engaged in a form of cultural archaeology, seeking to protect the esoteric context that made the art potent. We might see a sequence where the protagonist attempts to record the mentor explaining a complex principle, only for the mentor to refuse, stating that the sound recording lacks the necessary environmental resonance, the specific acoustic properties of the training space, the quality of the shared silence that are integral to the lesson's absorption. This highlights a poignant critique of digital archiving. That essential, non-transferable human experience cannot be quantified or stored on a server. This resistance creates friction, forcing the student to recognize that true apprenticeship demands presence, a commodity increasingly rare. The protagonist's internal journey toward accepting unrewarded effort is further emphasized by their relationship with their peers who remain deeply enmeshed in hustle culture. Imagine the protagonist missing a significant social gathering or a potential networking opportunity because they are committed to a late-night repair of the dojo's aging infrastructure, perhaps meticulously cleaning and oiling ancient wooden flooring. When confronted by a well-meaning friend about wasting potential, the protagonist can now articulate their purpose not as a defensive outburst, but as a statement of redefined value. My potential is measured in my capacity for stillness, not my ability to capitalize on movement. This reveals a hardening of their internal ethical compass, separating vocational ambition from personal fulfillment. The antagonist's narrative arc must embody the ultimate danger of data fetishism. The leader of the opposing force, obsessed with predictability, is deeply insecure about any input that cannot be modeled. A crucial weakness is revealed when the antagonist attempts to incorporate an element of unpredictability into their own training, perhaps hiring a performance artist or a chaotic improviser to confuse their models, but they fail to grasp that true chaos requires surrender, not control. They can simulate randomness, but they cannot embody it. This intellectual hubris becomes their operational blind spot. Their motivation, when finally glimpsed, is not greed, but a desperate need to prove that human endeavor, even the seemingly spiritual pursuit of martial arts, can be tamed, quantified, and sold as a reliable product. The mentor's emotional isolation is subtly counteracted by a relationship with a peripheral character, perhaps an older artisan, a librarian or a gardener, who shares a similar dedication to an obsolete, craft-based discipline. This parallel relationship allows the mentor moments of unguarded conversation where they discuss the beauty and terror of maintaining integrity in a rapidly accelerating world. These scenes serve as necessary emotional ballast, demonstrating that while the mentor might feel culturally adrift, pockets of true adherence to craft still exist. The protagonist, observing this, learns that community isn't about numerical consensus. It's about shared, quiet dedication to difficult truths. The climax should therefore pivot on the protagonist's ethical decision within the competitive frame. If the final confrontation is unavoidable, the protagonist should defeat the algorithmic opponent by introducing an element that is wholly personal and unquantifiable. perhaps a subtle, inherited gesture or a flicker of emotion that triggers a memory in the opponent, momentarily breaking their predictive focus. The true legacy celebrated is the assertion that the human soul, with all its imperfections and unpredictable surges of feeling, remains the ultimate irreducible variable, the one force that no amount of data processing can effectively map or neutralize. The final victory is the quiet confirmation that the legend lives in the process of becoming, not the achievement of being named the best. The enduring tension of Karate Kid Legends 2025 rests on the protagonist's negotiation of performative authenticity. Having shed the need for constant digital validation, they now grapple with the inherent performativity required within any structured competition, even one meant to prove internal mastery. The pressure mounts not from the desire to win, but from the fear of being misinterpreted by the audience, the fear that their quiet discipline will be mistaken for apathy or weakness on a large stage. The mentor recognizes this new trap. The modern student must learn to fight without needing the crowd to understand why they are fighting. This necessitates training sequences where the protagonist practices complex maneuvers in near darkness or under auditory bombardment, honing a performance solely for the internal witness, their own evolving conscience. The mentor's own career tragedy could be revealed as a moment where they chose personal truth over public acclaim during a high-stakes, televised event decades prior. Perhaps they exposed a systemic flaw in judging criteria, or refused to use a prohibited but performance-enhancing technique that others utilized freely. This act, initially seen as noble, led to professional ostracization, forcing their retreat from the mainstream. This history colors every interaction. The mentor is terrified the protagonist will repeat the gesture, but lack the inner fortitude to survive the subsequent isolation. The sharing of this memory is a moment of supreme trust, a metaphorical passing of the torch of principled stubbornness. The technological sophistication of the antagonists is further amplified by integrating biofeedback loops into their training regime. The rival team isn't just fighting optimally,